Nick Damiani, Paul Lamb, myself, Neil Doyle. So this video, we're going to get into a little bit of college basketball. We're going to talk about, obviously, the freshman phenom Ben Simmons, who's been having a stellar season for LSU. So that's one topic we're going to get into. And then our other topic, kind of transitioning into some coaching. Obviously, John Calipari's been some big talk lately as to whether he'll stay in the college ranks or will he move on to the NBA. And then with that, kind of talk about some other NBA coaching news, any people on the hot seat, and things of that matter. But let's get into it right away. Let's start talking about Ben Simmons, obviously, who's been having just an amazing year. You know, the number one player coming out of high school in last year's recruiting class. He's number one on Chad Ford's big board on ESPN to be the number one pick of the NBA draft. And this kid's just the full package. At 6'10", can handle the ball. He's averaging 20 points per game with 13 rebounds and just add 5 assists onto that. So his numbers are ridiculous. And it should be fun to watch. Obviously, the criticism in his game, not a great shooter, something he's been working on. But he's still just the athleticism he brings and his ability to finish around the rim are just, and being at 6'10", just the skills he brings with his size are pretty fun to watch. A lot of people comparing him to, maybe the next LeBron, which is obviously pretty high praise. What are your guys' thoughts? Is his game going to be able to transition into the NBA pretty easily, or is he going to be one of these top few picks that we've seen in the last few years that just hasn't been able to really produce?
I think he'll be phenomenal in the NBA. I think he's been a real joy to watch this year. You said 20, 13, and 5. He's really filling up the stat sheet. Only one other guy in college basketball can even probably come close to that, and that's Denzel Valentine. And Valentine's a senior in college. This guy's only a freshman. He's going to be the number one pick next year, no doubt about it. I mean, you said his jumper needs work, but if there's one thing that I would have a guy struggle with, it would be his shooting, because I feel like that can be pretty easily fixed once you get to the next level. And with him playing for LSU, he's going to take a lot more shots this year, so he's going to improve that part of his game a lot. And plus, you saw a guy like LeBron James when he came into the league. LeBron's still not that great of a shooter, but he finds ways to score and set his teammates up, which is something Simmons can do too this year. And, that's just so dangerous to have a guy that's 6'10" that can handle the ball and find open guys, because the vision for him is just so easy. I think he could be an all-star next year in the NBA in his first year. I know that's really high praise, but he's that good. He's shooting 57% this year, so he's efficient with it, too, on a team that he's the guy that has to take a lot of shots and do a lot for them. He's really impressed me this year.
Yeah, he's obviously an excellent player. He's putting up high school numbers at the college level, which is crazy. And I think he's definitely at the front of the National Player of the Year race. The only guys even close would be Denzel Valentine and Buddy Hield. But I think one thing, which Nick kind of talked about, with him being at LSU, I think we haven't seen him enough with good talent around him where if he makes mistakes, you can't just blame it on him being on a bad team. So I think he needs to be in a couple more high-pressure situations. I think they definitely need to make the NCAA tournament for us to really know how good he is. He played really well against Kentucky, but at the same time, that was up against a guy like Skal Abasari, who's not as good as people thought they were. He might still be a year or two away from the NBA. And a Kentucky team that may be overrated a little bit. I think with Ben Simmons, he has the potential to be, an NBA grade. He could be an all-star next year. I think we just need to see more. I think he needs to play more against good teams. And like I said, I just kind of want to see him in a high-pressure situation before I commit to saying he's the next thing.
And I totally agree with Paul on that, because it is interesting as the number one player coming out of high school, when you have schools like Kentucky, Duke, Kansas, teams that are going to be in the tournament and most likely going to have a chance to compete for a national title. I understand, you want to maybe go to LSU. They did have a good recruiting class, and it's not a bad basketball school. They've had good basketball players in the past, but obviously the last few years they haven't been so good. It is interesting because you wonder, why not go to a team with, 2 or 3 other pretty good players and have a chance to contend for a national title? It's almost, you wonder if he wants to be only the best guy on the team. He wants to be the star that everyone looks at. Obviously, he's putting up the numbers to show it, but you do wonder, because now he's going to be the number one pick. He's most likely going to go to the Nets, who are probably the worst team in the league, or one of those type teams, where who is he going to really be in the NBA when he goes to one of those teams? Is he just going to be one of those good players, one of the better players on the team, but he's never going to win? I don't really know if this LSU team is going to make the tournament. They're going to have to play really well in the SEC. They're only 9-6. I'm sorry. Obviously, that win over Kentucky was huge. We might not even see Ben Simmons in the March Madness tournament if this LSU team doesn't win games. So it's going to be interesting to watch. You almost wonder. I don't want to say he is being selfish in a way to want to be going to a school like LSU, but I think it's really interesting to see him turn down schools like Kentucky, Kansas, Duke, where he's going to be with 2 or 3 top players coming in their recruiting class with him and not have a chance to compete for a national title. You almost wonder maybe he wanted to go and try to, take LSU to the tournament and maybe lead him to a title, but it is interesting to see him pass up on those top schools. I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts on that? I don't know.
I just feel like you're knocking a guy for not going to a big school as a top recruit. Like he said, he was one of the people that said he didn't want to just go to a Kentucky school just where everybody's been going. He wanted to change it up a little bit, and that's why him and Blakeney went to LSU together. Try something different.
I mean, I get that part of it, Nick. But if you're going to go to a school that maybe hasn't been great in basketball, why not at least go to a school in a good basketball conference? I mean, outside of Kentucky and the SEC, there's not really a lot of people. Why not go to a school in the ACC that's maybe not so good at basketball? So at least if you're going to be on a bad team, at least you're playing against top competition all year round. I think that is questionable. I think he might still be, I don't know. When you watch Ben Simmons, it still feels like he's playing like a high schooler. And I mean, I know he's only a year removed, but he's still relying a lot on his athleticism. He's maybe not thinking, like you have to as a pro. I mean, it's a big jump to go from playing in the SEC at LSU, where you're playing teams like Arkansas, who's not very good, or Alabama or whoever, to going to the next level. I mean, I just think that's really hard for a one and done to do. We've seen that before with guys from small schools who just have a lot of trouble in the NBA, rather than a one and done from Duke or Kentucky, or at least they're playing against national good talent every week.
Maybe you like the campus.
That's true. You never know.
It'll look good.
I mean,
no, and I can't. I'm not gonna. I mean, whatever, right?
Well, and it's interesting to watch, but I think you definitely hope, and nobody's gonna fault the kid with the talent that he has. I mean, the skills are there. He's an amazing player to watch. But like you said, I mean, unless we really see him in the tournament, you're not gonna. I mean, they obviously play a tough team like Kentucky, and they had a few tough road games in the non-conference. But you didn't really get to see him play against a whole lot of top competition this year, especially if they don't make March Madness. But regardless, he's going to be the number 1 pick. It would be crazy if he wasn't, but he's going to be. And it should be interesting to watch him transition into the NBA. But I definitely think both of you make valid points. And he's been fun to watch this year at LSU. Still a lot of basketball left to see him get to play. Hopefully he makes the tournament. And then with that, we kind of transition, as we were talking about Kentucky. It is interesting. We've seen the last few weeks some firing. Well, one firing in the NBA. Obviously, Lionel Hollins fired from the Nets, and there was a lot of talk that John Calipari, they were talking to him, and they want him to maybe come and coach in the NBA. Just recently, I don't know if it was a day or two ago, Calipari came out and tweeted, Kentucky's where he wants to be. He loves being there. He doesn't want to leave. He has no plan on leaving. I also read an article the other day that he was asking like close to 120 mil for a certain amount of years.
112 million.
Which is crazy. Like, I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts? Is there any chance you guys think Calipari leaves from Kentucky to go coach a team in the NBA?
Nah, I really don't see it happening anytime soon, at least, because, I mean, he's got to be so comfortable at Kentucky. He's the GM, the coach, the president. He's everything there. He gets to pick. He answers to nobody there. If you go to the NBA, you're going to have to answer to somebody at least. I mean, I heard the Nets were willing to at least give him a president position with the coach position, which isn't bad. But, I mean, he's still got to talk with the GM and the owner and talk about who he wants to bring in. And I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think Calipari's as great of a coach as people think he is, truthfully. Phenomenal recruiter, probably the best, one of the best ever. He brings in talent every year, but we haven't seen him work with guys for multiple years in a while. We saw him work with the Harrisons for 2 years, but we don't know if he can develop talent, I feel like. I mean, yeah, you can get guys that are top recruits to go to the NBA in 1 year, but, I mean, weren't those guys already on that path anyways, regardless if they went to Calipari? Maybe give him a little push, but I think we need to see more from him as a developmental type coach.
Yeah, I think they kind of hit it right on the head. I mean, he's been in the NBA once, and he knows what that's like. So he didn't enjoy. I don't think he enjoyed it then. So why would he go back now? But the difference between college and the NBA is college, you coach the players on and off the court, in the facilities, out of facilities. You're coaching mind, body, spirit, all of that. You're not in charge of their lives, but you have a big impact. You know, you can set their curfew, you can set their study hours, this and that. But in the NBA, your job ends when you leave the facility and those guys leave the facility. You know, you're talking. I mean, there's a big difference between handling an 18-year-old superstar in college and handling a 27-year-old superstar in the NBA who's making more money than you, who couldn't give a damn what you have to say as long as their paychecks keep on coming in. Because of that, I just don't think he wants to coach in the NBA. It's not even that that he doesn't have maybe the front office skills for it too, with free agency or trading, all that. I think he just doesn't want to. He doesn't want to have to deal with egos like that on the level where it's about money, not just about skill. You know, because the egos you have in college are about skill, not about money. You can change that because, like I said, you're coaching, them on and off the court. But in the NBA, it's just so much different. It's such a business. I don't think he'd enjoy that. I don't think he'd be good at it. I don't think it's going to happen ever.
Well, and the bottom line, and I agree with Paul, I don't think he'll ever leave Kentucky. I'd be really shocked if he did. Bottom line, college basketball, you can have a mediocre team, and with a really good coach, that team can be good. The college is a coach's league, where the NBA is a player's league. That's the big difference. I kind of disagree with Nick. I think Calipari develops players in the year that they're there, a lot of them. I think he teaches them a lot. I think he knows what the NBA is like with just that 1 year being there, and I think he's able to get the kids the experience. He treats, I think, how he takes his practices, how they travel on the road. I think it's an NBA-type mentality, and I think that's what gets these kids who are getting drafted in the first round prepared. We've seen a lot of players who are talking the NBA. There's a lot of solid players. I mean, obviously, Anthony Davis, one of the top players in the league, but
was he not going to be one of the top players regardless of Calipari?
I don't think. Obviously, the talent was there, but look at, like Calipari said, Anthony Davis took the fourth most shots on that team that won the national championship. Poitras was fifth. Those were the top two guys in the draft. Obviously, the skills were there, but they weren't the top players on the team. I think he was able to. I just think he runs his teams like an NBA type style with everything they do, and I think that's what gets kids ready for what the NBA is like, and I think that's where you got to give him a little bit of credit. Obviously, one of the top recruiters, but it's just a totally different level of basketball between college and NBA. College is a coach's league. You look at a team like Xavier this year, they don't have a guy that's going to be drafted in the first round of the draft, but Chris Mack is a great coach, and he's got that team as a top 10 team this year in college basketball. Where the NBA, it's all about the players. Obviously, one maybe exception. Obviously, the Spurs have some great players, but Greg Popovich is a great coach, obviously. But they brought in, when Duncan, Ginobili, Parker, now you have Kawhi Leonard, they brought in great players consistently. But
right.
It's an NBA is a players' league, and that's where the big difference is. But I don't see Calipari leaving. I'd be really surprised if he did. He's got such a great gig at Kentucky. It'd be interesting to see him go. So, obviously, the Nets, that was the big thing. They reached out to him. If they don't get him, there's been talk, and there's been a lot of different talk on the NBA coaching hot seats. A guy like Luke Walton possibly could go to the Nets. You've seen him step in for Steve Kerr, who's been ill. Paul's shaking his head on this. But that's been talk. Luke Walton could step in and be the coach of the Nets. That's been some talk. I don't know. What do you guys think of that?
I think that's a really small sample size, I guess. But, I mean, he is doing a good job, so you got to give him credit for that. I mean, he's picking up a pretty good gig, though, for himself, a team that won the NBA championship last year. But, I mean, I think he probably does deserve a shot at a head coaching job. He's doing a great job there. He wouldn't be my first choice off the bat, but do you?
Yeah, I just think that's way too soon. I mean, not to discredit what he's done, but I think anybody with any college or even high school coaching experience could have got this team to above 500 at this point with that roster. They have the best roster in basketball. They have the best team chemistry in basketball. And that's not something that they, just developed over the summer. I think that's something that the players themselves put into place. Not to take away from what Steve Kerr did, but Luke Walton's inheriting what Steve Kerr did, and Steve Kerr inherited what Mark Jackson did. So to give Luke Walton that kind of credit already, and to say that, oh, he's already ready for a head coach job, I just think that that's way too premature. We've seen how that works out when you're so soon. Jason Kidd, the Bucks are not doing very well right now. Even Derek Fisher with the Knicks, they're playing better than expected, but Derek Fisher also has one of the greatest coaches in NBA history looking over his shoulder, teaching him how to do it. Luke Walton wouldn't have that in Brooklyn. I think that's way too soon. A more likely name would be Tom Thibodeau or Mark Jackson. I don't get how Mark Jackson doesn't have a job still. I don't get how there's been so many coaching vacancies. I mean, he built this Warriors team. He helped draft a lot of them. That's something I don't get, how he doesn't have a job. I'm hoping that he at least gets interviewed for a lot of the head coaching vacancies for next season.
Well, him and, like you said, Thibodeau are big names out there on the market. Any other coaches you guys see as being on the hot seat for certain teams that could be on their way out?
Yeah, I think the Wizards, Randy Whitman. I mean, the Wizards are below 500. They're 17-19 now. They did have a good win against the Bulls the other day, but with the backcourt like they have with Beal and Wall, there's no reason that team should be below 500, especially in the Eastern Conference right now. I mean, last year they were a 5 seed. Last year I thought they were really going to make a run in the playoffs, especially with the Cavs, with them being hurt. I thought the Wizards actually had a shot. They ended up losing to the Hawks, I think, in the second round. The Hawks were hot at the time, but there's absolutely no reason that this team should be below 500 with the talent they got. I think they're like 19th in efficiency defensively. So we talked about Thibodeau being available. Thibodeau made the Bulls a perennial power defensively. I think he'd be good for the Wizards maybe because they do look a little lackadaisical on defense. But at the same time, they got guards who can pick up the scoring because with Thibodeau comes a lack of scoring, I guess. But I think the defense will balance out in a good way for them. I mean, there's no reason he shouldn't have a job. And just like you said, Mark Jackson should also have a job. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. I think you hit it on the head with the Wizards. I think they're going to get a guy like Mark Jackson or Tom Thibodeau. They need a big-name coach to try to entice KD there over the summer. I think another spot, another team that's league that's really been underperforming is the Memphis Grizzlies. I mean, Marc Gasol was a lot of people's early season pick to be in MVP contention, and Mike Conley's good. They got Zach Randolph still. They picked up Matt Barnes, and they just haven't lived up to it this year. And then of course always the Lakers with Byron Scott. I'd be surprised if he's there next year. You get such a short time in a city like LA. I think they're just going to be looking with Kobe retiring to fire the coach and start off fresh next season. That's another place that Luke Walton's been mentioned as going. He would flounder there. 2 weeks he'd be gone. But yeah, I think those are a couple of cases.
Poor Luke. No, I agree. I think a big one, Byron Scott. You got to feel bad for him. You knew him coming in that they were after the bad year, his first year, and then they kind of said they're going to rebuild. And then you got to feel bad for him because with the Kobe departure this year, it's been the Kobe show, and they can't really do anything. But he has been criticized for not playing D'Angelo Russell as much. He's been limiting his minutes as of late. So he's been getting a lot of criticism. I can see him on the way out there, and there's been a lot of talks on trying to get Tom Thibodeau out there. So it should be interesting to see. There's going to be, I think, a decent amount of moves in the coaching market come, maybe midway for some of these teams might start firing. We've already seen the Nets fire Lionel Hollins. And then at the end of the year, I'm sure you're going to see some coaching firing. So should be interesting to watch here in the upcoming weeks and towards the end of the season. But that will do it for this episode. Midway through college basketball, NBA basketball, some fun stuff should be on the way here with the Crossover Report. That'll do it for us tonight. Paul Lamb, Nick Damiani, and myself, Neil Doyle.
From the shot 708, we got 6 rings, Michael Jordan, great. Need to save the date, this a brand new debate. Talk teams that we love and talk teams that we hate.